We're talking about Lewis's power to evoke emotion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the times that he sometimes brought me near tears from something that he was singing or playing because it was so moving. And of course, the range of what he could do is astonishing. But you don't want to hear a lecture from me about Louis. Yeah, it's self-evident. I mean, you could, Dinah Washington, I quoted in the liner notes, she said, because I can sing anything at all. And she was right, she could. Louis could sing and play absolutely anything and everything. And he did. The range of what he recorded is tremendous. And he even, there was a thing on television where they brought together him and was Robert Merrill, the opera singer, whom I have a special dislike for, because when I one summer in college, when I was a room service waiter at Grossinger's, when you're a room service waiter there, you had to carry a folding table under your arm, tablecloth, napkins, cutlery, and you carried the food on a big metal, on a platter covered with a big metal lid. You had to carry that sometimes like a quarter of a mile away. Then you had to set it up and everything. So you think the most decent people would give you a decent tip, right? No, this guy gave me 50 cents. So I had a particular non-appreciation for it. But when he was on with Louis, they did Vesti Laguba together, and Merrill he did something that was supposed to be jazzy, and Louis did it operatically, and Louis cut him, absolutely cut him. Louis loved opera, and in an interview with this guy, his name was Merriman, who did this.
Richard Merriman.
Yeah. He talks about that, and it's not mentioned often enough, about records that he had. And he talks about, he said John McCormick, the Irish tenor, beautiful phrasing, which is absolutely the right thing about McCormick. And he talks about us, of course, he said Caruso. And he even says that in his autobiography, that when you bought a Victrola, as it was called in those days, you got a Caruso record because Caruso was the first record million seller, which in those days, of course, was fabulous. He is the first recording star. But he talks about sopranos, he talks about Galli-Corci and Tetrasini, and those are the high note coloratures. And I'm convinced that that's where he got the high note stuff, because there wasn't anybody playing high notes like that on trumpet, just not. So I think that's where he got it, that you could do this beautiful thing, that these Tetrasini was not as famous as Galli-Corci, didn't make as many records, but to me, I like whether she had a warmer voice. Anyway, she had a chicken named after her, Chicken Tetrasini, you still find it on some menus. But you could go up and swoop up, but of course in tune and go way up. And I think that's where Pop's got it from, Because when he does that, he's always right on target in tune, he never goes off. And it's interesting that in all these tributes that we got for Dombey, one of them is from Sun Ra, and Sun Ra remembers being in the South, being in a small place, not playing, but a place that had a jukebox, and there was Louis, and he said that he remembers, that he was so moved by this and how high he went. Well, I'm positive, because it fits in with the time, that was Sitting in the Dark. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know Sitting in the Dark, check it out. It has a cadenza that is absolutely unbelievable. And nobody else has ever done these things on a trumpet. I mean, Wynton, who, knows his trumpets real well, I mean, he's a fine classical player as well. Nobody has done on a trumpet what Louis could do. The sound, and this is the thing, I've said that if you haven't heard Louis live, you haven't really heard the full extent of his sound, because hearing it as it come out of the horn, in a space, especially if it was a space designed for good acoustics, it's true of other players as well, and it's true of the human voice, that even in the most sophisticated reproduction capabilities that we have now, it's not quite the same as live. I mean, and I don't mean live the way they say when it's live on TV.
Yeah.
I mean real live. So Louis could fill a hall with that sound, and the sound was, because when you heard it live, it was almost as if it was touching you, It was almost, there was a physical quality to it. It came at you like that. And it was pretty warm.
Making the air vibrate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to go back to something, just an odd thing. You said hearing Louis sing various things could bring you near tears. Did you hear him perform You'll Never Walk Alone?
Hear it live?
Yeah.
Yes, I believe I did, and I think it may have been at Newport, it may have been at another festival. It was outdoors, that much I can remember. A famous journalist wrote about that, about hearing Louis witnessing live, and with a lot of black people in the audience, and what it did, the effect it had. That's one example. I'll give you another one, which is my favorite. I've said it before, and you know that it's coming. I had the good fortune of getting to know James Baldwin. He was Jimmy to me. I met him at, I won't go into all that, at a place in the village called San Remo. That was in my early days in New York. And my father is a writer, is a novelist, so, is interested in, anyway, and we had a mutual friend, and so I got to know him a bit. And so his sister, Gloria, had an assignment from Ebony magazine to cover Newport, so she brought him along. But he really didn't know anybody there, but he knew me, so we were together, and Louis was the last thing, as he always, nobody could follow him, on the program that night. And it was a beautiful night, and at Newport, when it was, when the weather was good, and the sky was clear and everything, the sound really carried, and music was, it was great, because it was like a natural auditorium, So Louis would always end, because he kept getting more requests to play more, one more, and he would do that as long as he felt, was fair, not just to him, but to his sidemen, go on. So he would always end with the national anthem, which between you and me is a tune that, both musically and verbally, Herbert Hoover is the one who made it into the national anthem, and I think they should abolish that and put something that's America the Beautiful. But anyway, that's enough of that. But Louis, always played at the end. So Louis played it a cappella, and Jimmy turned to me and he said, that's the first time I've liked that song. I think that says something about Louis' power. Jimmy was not a jazz fan. He had a brother who was a jazz pianist, and he wrote a short story about it. His brother got into, into junk and died, so he had no particular love for what was then the jazz life. But that, of course, had nothing to do with Mr. Morgenstern. So what can I tell you about Louis except that he was, he was unique. And I think I told you this once. I was invited to a thing at university in Leeds, England. They had a jazz, jazz clinic, and there were several people. One of my friend, Lauren Schoenberg, was one of them. Of course, I was another. And the third, I think, was Digby Fairweather. Digby Fairweather is a British trumpeter who now also runs an institute which is similar to the Institute of Jazz Studies, or the big collection of materials that are accessible to the public. A research library. And each of us gave several talks, and each of us, of course, talked about Louis. And the thing is that each of us, independent of each other, made a remark that indicated that we felt that Louis might have been a visitor from another realm. And each one of us, as I say, independently of each other. And, we still don't know a lot of things about the universe. I don't know.
I want to pause there for a second.